I woke up from my coma and heard my son-in-law say in that flat, impatient voice of his, "That old woman will be sent to a nursing home the moment she wakes up." For 1 second, I thought I was still dreaming. Then the smell of antiseptic and the weight of the oxygen cannula under my nose told me I was very much awake. My eyelids stayed closed, my fingers stayed limp. I pretended to remain unconscious. The mattress dipped at my feet. I felt Jason's hand brush the blanket near my ankle, not gently, just checking that I was still there. "She is costing us a fortune, Claire," he said. "ICU rehab home care. The minute she opens her eyes, we sign the admission papers. Sunny Glen takes her." End of story. Sunny Glen. The name landed like a stone in my chest. I knew that place. I had read their invoices for 40 years. State facility. Understaffed. Long hallways that smelled like bleach and loneliness. The next morning they came to take me away, I would tell you now if this were just a story. But when they showed up with the wheelchair and the clipboard, I was already gone. Betrayed by my own family, I quietly sold everything I owned and started a new life far away. My name is Bernice Holloway. I am 72 years old, and this is how it happened. Before I take you back into that hospital room with me, do me a small favor. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from. If you have ever cared for aging parents or worried about your own old age, hit like and subscribe. Stories like mine are not just entertainment. Sometimes they are a warning. Now back to the bed. Back to the moment I realized my life had become a business problem for my own family. I lay as still as I could. My hearing was clearer than it had any right to be. Machines beeped around me in a steady rhythm, little electronic metronomes, counting out someone else's decisions about my body. On the metal tray beside my bed, I knew there was a familiar object. I had felt the nurse set it there earlier when she thought I was too far gone to care about personal belongings. A navy blue leather notebook, edges worn. My initials, BH, pressed into the corner in fading gold. I had carried that notebook for most of my adult life. When I was the billing manager at St. Mark's Medical Center, that blue book went with me on every round, every invoice, every appeal, every note about insurance codes and corrections. It was my habit, long before we trusted computers, to write things down twice, once in the system, once in my book. Patients used to joke that if Bernice had written your name in the blue notebook, you were going to be all right. Now it sat next to my hospital bed, heavier than it looked. Not with paper, but with memory. "Jason, please lower your voice," my daughter whispered. "Claire." I heard the tremor in her throat. Not anger, not even grief. A kind of tight, tired panic I recognized from young mothers who spent all day juggling children, jobs, and bills that never matched the paycheck. "I am not heartless," she said softly. "She just had a stroke. We do not even know what she will be like yet." I wanted to reach out and touch her hand. I wanted to say, "I am still here, honey. It is me. I am listening." But I stayed still. Jason exhaled sharply the way he did when builders on his sites asked for overtime. He was a contractor. Concrete drywall deadlines. Everything a cost, a schedule, a line item. "We have known this was coming for years," he said. "She has the high blood pressure, the dizzy spells. Your mother has been playing hero to everyone else her whole life. Now she is going to need 24-hour care. We cannot do that at home. We barely keep up with Lily as it is. And your hours at the clinic and my jobs. Be realistic. Be realistic." I had used that phrase on Claire more times than I could count. When she wanted to study art instead of nursing. When she talked about moving to New York with a boy who played guitar and never wore real shoes. Be realistic, Claire. I had said, tapping my calculator, sliding a tuition bill across the kitchen table. The numbers do not lie. I felt the weight of that memory settle on my chest like a second blanket. My vet jouak, as you might call it. My flaw. I had always trusted numbers more than feelings. I had paid every bill on time. I had kept every receipt. I had stayed late at the hospital and missed more than one school play. I had told myself it was for her, for us. Now my own daughter stood over my bed while her husband turned my life into a spreadsheet problem. "It is not just about money," Claire murmured. "Mom hates those places, you know that. She used to come home from work and cry about patients whose kids left them in those big facilities and never visited again." I felt a small swell of warmth in my chest. There she was, my girl, still in there somewhere under the exhaustion and the pressure of a mortgage and a 7-year-old who loved soccer and lost teeth in the same week. Jason lowered his voice, but not enough. "And how long do you think she will last, Claire?" he said. "Be honest." The doctor said it was a major stroke. They said coma. They said they do not know what function will come back. Do you want Lily to see her grandmother drooling in our living room for the next 5 years? Do you want to bathe your mother every night after a 10-hour shift? I heard a soft sob from Claire, quickly stifled. I wish she had slowed down earlier," she whispered. "She never listened. She always said she was fine. She worked Christmas Eve most years. She missed my college graduation. For other people's families, there it was, the wound looking back at me. My choices reflected in her pain. I had no defense, not in that moment, lying there with half my body refusing to answer when I called it. But whatever mistakes I had made as a mother, I knew one thing: no one was going to decide my ending without my consent." The monitor beside me beeped steadily. The nurse at the station outside laughed at something on her phone. Somewhere down the hall, a cart clattered over a metal threshold. Hospitals have their own kind of music. If you have worked in one long enough, you can hear time in the sounds. I tried to move my right index finger. Nothing happened. I tried again. This time, a small tremor like a fish, twitching at the end of a line. Good. When you spend your life working with stroke patients, you learn not to believe in miracles. You believe in small movements, in tiny improvements, in the long, boring grind of rehab and paperwork. You are listed as her power of attorney, Jason was saying. We used that form your mother signed last year after that dizzy spell. Remember, she insisted on reading every line before signing. The lawyer said it was valid. Yes, I remembered. I had sat in Attorney Lopez's office, my blue notebook open, taking my own notes while he explained the forms. Durable power of attorney for finance, healthcare proxy. I wanted to make things easier for Claire if something happened. I had not considered that who advised her might become the problem. "Are you sure we should use that?" Claire asked. It felt like a lot. She said it was just in case, not for now. "We are not stealing from her," Jason replied. "We are protecting her. Sunny Glen is on the list of approved facilities. Medicare covers a portion. We sell the condo to cover the rest. It is not like she can live there alone now. Sell my condo." The small 2-bedroom place I had bought after my husband died paid off in careful increments. Every extra shift, every vacation I did not take, every birthday present I settled for simple instead of extravagant. All of it sitting in that brick building with the chipped green door and the creaky elevator. My home reduced to a funding source in my son-in-law's mind. I took another breath, deeper this time. The air burned a little going in. My right hand twitched against the sheet. I let it slide very slowly toward the cold metal railing. My fingertips brushed something smooth and familiar. The blue leather cover of my notebook. It must have been tucked there when they moved me from the ambulance. Maybe Claire had insisted they bring my things. She always had known I felt naked without that book near me. I hooked one finger over the elastic band. I could not lift it yet, but I could feel it. And that was enough. They talked a few minutes more, about logistics, about discharge plans, about timing. Jason's voice stayed crisp, efficient, full of words like placement and capacity. Claire's voice wavered along the edges, sometimes pushing back, sometimes yielding. When their footsteps finally receded down the hall, I opened my eyes a fraction of an inch. The room swam into view, white ceiling tiles, a crooked poster about hand washing, the IV pole standing like a skinny sentry beside me. And there on the tray table, my blue notebook. It was not dramatic. Nothing in that moment looked like a movie. My gown was wrinkled. My hair itched. My mouth tasted like metal and old coffee. But as I stared at that notebook, a thought came to me so clearly it might as well have been written on the wall. You have spent your whole life reading the fine print for other people. Now it is time to read your own. I forced my fingers to curl, slowly. The pain shot up my arm, hot and sharp. I gritted my teeth. 1 inch at a time, I dragged the notebook closer until it rested against my hip. I pressed my palm on the cover. I am not going to Sunny Glen. I whispered inside my own skull. Not like this. Not as cargo on Jason's spreadsheet. For the first time in days or weeks, I was not sure I felt something other than fear. I felt focus. In that focus, even lying flat under fluorescent lights, I could already see a different picture me at my kitchen table. The blue notebook open, bank statements spread out, signed papers that did not say admission but sale and transfer and donation. They thought a stroke had turned me into a helpless patient. They had forgotten who I was. I was the woman who knew where every account was. I was the woman who had memorized every password. I was the woman who had helped 100 families fight insurance denials. If I could move my hand, I could move my money. If I could move my money, I could move my life. Out in the hallway, a cart squeaked past. A nurse hummed under her breath. Somewhere in this building, a social worker was printing out placement options for me. They did not know yet that I had already made my own. I left the hospital on a cold morning. No warning, no goodbye. No call from Claire or Jason. They believed I was still lying there, silent and helpless. They thought I was a body waiting to be transported. But I had returned to myself, even if only partly. My right hand trembled as I pulled my coat close. Each step carried a sharp pull through my spine. Still, I stood. I walked. I remembered who I was. I signed my own discharge papers. No one questioned me. Old age turns you invisible. I stepped out of the building and left the scent of antiseptic behind. The gray sky opened above me. My hand brushed against the blue leather journal hidden inside my coat. The leather felt cold yet familiar. It reminded me that something in my life still belonged to me. I took a cab to my apartment. The brick building appeared at the end of the street. The roof sagged slightly. People called it outdated, but to me, it was the last warm place connected to my family. I stood at the door and took a steady breath before turning the key. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. No dishwasher hum, no morning radio, only dense silence. No one waiting, no one asking if I felt well, no one placing a hand on my shoulder. The truth of that silence chilled me more than the morning air. I switched on the light. The dining table was buried under unopened mail. Electric bills, bank statements, flyers for senior care services. Jason must have seen this pile many times. He only cared about what he could sell. I sat down. My eyes fell on the frayed corner of the blue leather journal. That worn edge was one of the first object motifs of my life. It showed how time erodes everything except one thing, my need to remember what is mine. I opened the journal. The first page shook slightly under my fingers. My handwriting stared back at me. Neat, straight, controlled, like I was 30 years younger. Then I noticed another envelope on the table. Not a bill. Not a flyer. A letter. Plain. Unmarked. Centered perfectly on the table. I opened it. Only one sentence: we have received a request to verify ownership of your property. No date, no signature. I knew exactly who sent it, and I knew why. Jason had not only planned to send me to a nursing home, he had attempted to sell my apartment while I was in a coma. My chest tightened, my shoulders locked. But that pain was nothing compared to the shock of being betrayed by the same child I once carried. I thought about Claire. My daughter had filled this home with laughter when she was small. Now she stayed silent and let her husband plan my future. I closed my eyes for a moment, not to cry, but to accept reality. The apartment hummed with a silence so complete it echoed when I set the journal down. Being alone was not a punishment. Sometimes it is the first step toward freedom. I walked to the window. Morning light touched my face. The street below was still wet from last night's rain. My reflection stared back, a tired face, silver hair. But in my eyes, something had returned. A small spark, sharp and steady. The same spark that once helped me read every fine detail in thousands of contracts. I held the blue journal. I wrote a new page the day I returned, the first day of truth. I made lists. I sorted documents. I checked bank accounts. I reviewed recent transactions. One withdrawal stood out. $6,200 taken 3 weeks earlier using medical power of attorney. The note read, "Emergency household care." A lie. There was no such expense in any record. Jason had taken the money for himself. The betrayal was no longer emotional. It was factual, and I understood facts more clearly than anyone. My breath grew shallow, my ribs ached, but the ache was not illness. It was awakening. I wrote again. No one decides my future without me. A knock sounded at the door. I tensed. I looked through the peephole. It was Mrs. Henderson. She lived upstairs for 30 years. Short frame, silver curls, holding a small bag of bread. I opened the door. She stared at me. "Bernice." "My granddaughter works at the hospital. She said you were still in the ICU. I nodded. Her information was correct, but I am not there anymore. She placed the bread on my table. I know that look. It is the look of someone who realizes they have no one left, but you still have me. I smiled faintly, my first real smile since waking. Thin, but true. It became the first seed of redemption. Someone still believed I mattered. She poured water. I shared a little of what happened. Not everything. Just enough for her to understand that I was not all right. She did not interrupt. She did not judge. She rested a hand on my arm like a mother comforting an adult child who had wandered too far alone. "I know this," she said. "Betrayal always begins in the dark. But so does recovery." Her words settled gently inside me. Not sharp, not bitter, just honest. After she left, I sat alone. Sunlight reached into the small kitchen. A single beam touched the blue leather journal. The surface glowed as if reminding me that it was still mine, still a part of me, still a place where I write my truth. I knew what I had to do next. If they wanted to turn me into a victim, I would become a survivor. If they wanted to take everything from me, I would move before they could. The question now was not, why did they do this? It was, what is my first step away from them? And I already had the answer. I woke early the next morning with a stiff neck and a tight chest. I had fallen asleep at the small kitchen table with the blue journal under my arm. The winter air pressed through the windows. My breath looked pale in the cold light. I wrapped a scarf around my shoulders and stepped outside. I needed fresh air and a plan. I needed clarity before fear swallowed me. The street felt familiar and foreign at the same time. Neighbors scraped ice from their windshields. A delivery truck rumbled past. Nothing about the morning looked dangerous, yet everything in my life now had sharp edges. Betrayal changes your vision. You start noticing who watches and who avoids your eyes. You start remembering small details you once ignored. That was when I saw her. Margot Blake stood near a silver SUV parked across the street. A bright red coat clung to her thin frame. Her hair was styled in a perfect wave that did nothing to soften her severe expression. She looked at me the way a cat studies a bird. Not cruel yet, just calculating. My stomach tightened. I knew that expression. I had seen it on people who pretend to care while preparing to take something from you. She lifted her chin slightly. "Bernice, you are up earlier than expected." She said my name with a sugary tone that felt false at every level. I kept my voice steady. "I live here," I said. "It is my normal morning." Her smile widened. Too fast, too staged. Well, that may not be the case for long. The way she said it was casual, almost playful, but I felt the threat tucked behind her words. I stepped closer. Her perfume smelled like something sharp and floral. "What do you mean?" I asked. She laughed lightly. "Oh dear, Jason told us everything. It is better if you rest somewhere safe. You should not worry about property or paperwork. Leave that to us." The words slammed into my chest. Jason told us everything. Us, not Claire, not family, Margot, the architect behind every cold decision. I kept my face calm. I handle my own affairs. She tilted her head. "You handled them before your coma, but now you need guidance, and Jason is trying his best. You should appreciate him." I felt heat rise under my skin. I did not raise my voice. I simply responded, "I appreciate honesty." Her smile hardened. She stepped closer until I felt her breath. "Then let me be honest. Families can become liabilities. Sometimes they need help making difficult choices." She walked back to her SUV and shut the door with a sharp click. The car pulled away, leaving behind the faint smell of perfume and cruelty. I stood on the sidewalk for a long moment. My heartbeat grew steady. The fear inside me thinned, leaving a sharper feeling behind. My breath steadied, as if my body finally remembered who I was. Margot Blake was not confused. She was not misinformed. She was not an innocent bystander listening to Jason's worries. She was directing him, and she saw me as an obstacle. When I returned inside, the apartment felt smaller than before. I locked the door and leaned against it, letting the truth sink in. I was not only dealing with betrayal, I was dealing with someone who thrived on manipulation, someone who enjoyed control, someone who viewed weakness as opportunity. I sat at the table and opened the blue journal. I wrote, "Margot Blake is the danger I did not expect. I needed help, not family. Family was compromised. I needed someone who understood patterns of control." I dialed Victor first. He had been my colleague for 20 years before retirement. He answered with a sleepy groan. "Morning already," he said. "I was having a dream about pancakes." "Victor." I said, "I need you awake." "Well, now I am awake and mildly terrified." I explained the morning encounter. He let out a long whistle. "Bernice Margot Blake does not enter a room. She attacks it." The comment made me smile for the first time that day. Victor always used humor as a bandage. "Tell me what you know," I said. "Give me 1 hour," he replied. "I will call you from the precinct. I know someone who owes me a favor." I hung up and exhaled slowly. 1 hour. 1 hour until I learned how deep this ran. I made tea and stood near the window. Snowflakes drifted lazily down the street. The quiet scene outside felt at odds with the storm inside my chest. I pressed my palm against the cold glass. My fingers shook, not from fear, from the weight of knowing I had to fight alone. At exactly 1 hour, Victor called. "Sit down," he said. "This is worse than we thought." I sat. He continued. "I asked Officer Delgado to pull public records. Everything is legal to access, nothing unethical, just facts. Facts. The only language I trusted." "Start," I said. "Margot is in debt," he said. $48,000, credit cards, personal loans, some overdue. She's been sued twice, evicted 3 times. I closed my eyes. The pattern was clear. She blames everyone but herself, Victor added. She calls herself a financial consultant, but her card declined at a grocery store last week. Delgado saw the report. I rubbed my temples. Victor kept going. And get this, she posted a luxury handbag on Instagram yesterday. Everyone thinks she bought it. Police records show it was reported missing from a boutique 2 days earlier. I opened my eyes. "What does this have to do with me?" I asked softly. "People like Margot survive by attaching themselves to someone stable," Victor said. "She found Jason. He is easy to influence. You own property. You have assets. You are the target." I swallowed hard. The truth was sharp, but it was the truth I needed. "Why did she approach me today?" I asked. "Because she is afraid," Victor said. "She expected you to be weak, but you walked out of that hospital. That ruins her timeline." In the distance, a car engine backfired. I flinched. My body was still recovering, but my mind sharpened. "Thank you," I said quietly. Bernice Victor added, "Do not confront her alone. She plays dirty, and she plays fast." I ended the call and stood in the center of my apartment. For the first time since waking from my coma, the fear inside me shifted into something stronger, something heavier, something steady. Resolve. I walked to the mirror. My reflection stared back, lines around my mouth, silver hair tucked behind my ears, a small scratch near my jaw from the fall in the hospital. I traced the scratch with my finger. This would be my second object motif, a reminder of the moment my life split in two, before the coma, after the awakening. I whispered to my reflection, "They tried to remove me. Now I will remove their power." The path ahead was uncertain, but I knew this. Everything they built on lies would soon fall apart, and I would be the one holding the truth. I woke before sunrise with a knot tightening in my chest. The house felt colder than usual. I pulled my coat close and stood by the window. A pale strip of dawn stretched across the sky. I knew today would demand strength. I knew I could not walk blindly anymore. If I wanted to protect what was mine, I needed facts. Facts do not lie. People do. I made a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table. The blue leather journal lay beside me. Its worn edges reminded me that truth must be written before it is forgotten. I opened it to a clean page. Investigation, I wrote. A single word, a promise to myself. I dialed Victor. He answered quickly as if he had been waiting. "You ready?" he asked. "As ready as I can be," I said. "Good," he replied. Officer Delgado agreed to help. "Nothing illegal, only public records, but it will show us who we are dealing with." I grabbed my coat and keys. I am on my way. The station was quiet when I arrived. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Officer Delgado welcomed me with a respectful nod. He had kind eyes and a serious posture. The kind of posture that belongs to someone who has seen too much. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said, "please sit." I appreciated the formality. It reminded me of my years reading contracts at the law office. Every detail mattered. Every name mattered. Every sentence mattered. Delgado placed a folder on the table. "This is all public," he said, "but it paints a clear picture." My pulse quickened. He opened the first page. Margot Blake currently holds $48,000 in debt, he began. High-interest credit cards, old personal loans, all past due. I breathed in slowly. Delgado flipped to the next page. 2 civil cases filed against her in the last 10 years, both for unpaid rent, both ended with eviction orders. He pointed at a third sheet. She has been removed from 3 apartments. I felt my jaw tighten. The pattern was unmistakable. He continued. There is also a police note from a supermarket clerk. Her card declined. She shouted at the employees. Security escorted her out. Victor muttered. She calls herself a financial consultant. Delgado nodded. She does, but income records show no stable employment for years. I leaned back in my chair. My breath escaped in a heavy exhale. Delgado then opened a printed screenshot from social media, a photo of Margot holding a luxury handbag. She posted this yesterday, he said. I studied the picture. Perfect smile, perfect pose, perfect lie. Delgado added, the bag was reported missing from a boutique 2 days earlier. My grip tightened on the folder. Victor whispered, she lives in illusions, but illusions collapse fast. Delgado closed the folder. Mrs. Caldwell, I believe she saw you as a financial opportunity. You waking from the coma threatened her plan. A cold wave washed over me. I asked, why target me? He answered, because you have assets. You have a home. You have savings. And you have a son-in-law who listens to her. The truth stung because it was simple. Jason was not malicious. He was weak. Weak people become tools in stronger hands. Delgado continued, be careful. People like her escalate when they lose control. I nodded. I understand. Victor placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. We will not let her take 1 more inch from you. I gave him a small smile. Thank you. When I left the station, the cold air bit my cheeks, but clarity warmed me more than the winter sun. I had evidence now. Evidence of her pattern, evidence of her desperation, evidence that she was not chaotic by accident. She was chaotic by design. I took a slow walk through the neighborhood. The snow cracked under my boots. Each step felt deliberate. I passed a bakery with warm light spilling onto the sidewalk. I stepped inside for a brief moment of warmth. While waiting for my tea, my phone buzzed. A text from Victor. "Check your email. I found something else." I stepped to the corner table and opened the message. There it was, a forwarded screenshot, a message from Jason's number to Margot. "Make your mother-in-law pay for everything. Keep her out." My breath stilled. My fingers froze above the screen. That was the confirmation I needed. Not that Jason wanted to hurt me, but that Margot had pushed him, influenced him, shaped his decisions, poisoned his thinking. The betrayal felt sharp, but the clarity felt sharper. I forwarded the message to my own email and saved a copy in 2 folders. I had learned the hard way that truth must have backups. I stepped outside again. Snowflakes drifted slowly. The world felt quiet, too quiet. On the sidewalk ahead, I noticed a woman staring at me. A tall figure wrapped in a red coat. Margot. She stood still, hands in her pockets, watching. The wind lifted her hair. Her lips curled into a faint smirk, a smirk that said she believed she still had the upper hand. She walked toward me with slow, controlled steps. "Busy morning," she said. I kept my voice calm, just gathering information. Her smile tightened. "You should rest. Elderly women should not waste energy on pointless tasks." My pulse sped, but my voice stayed steady. "I decide how I spend my energy." She stepped closer. "You were expected to stay in the hospital longer. You changed the plan. The plan." The word burned through my chest. "What plan?" I asked. She tilted her head with fake innocence. "You know what plan. Everyone knows their place. You must learn yours." I felt anger rise, but I did not show it. I responded quietly. "My place is where I decide, not where you assign." Her eyes narrowed, a crack in her mask. "Careful," she whispered. "You do not want trouble." I met her gaze without fear. "Trouble began the day you targeted my family." Her jaw twitched. For a second, the mask slipped. She backed away slowly. "We will see how long you can stand alone." Then she walked off, heels clicking sharply on the pavement. I stood still until she disappeared around the corner. Then I breathed again. Not fear, resolve. I returned home and placed the blue journal on the table. I wrote a new entry, "She is afraid. That is why she pushes harder." I lifted the silver house key again. Its weight felt different now. Not painful, not heavy, just honest. Everything hidden was now visible. Everything silent now had proof. Everything stolen would be reclaimed. I whispered into the quiet room, "Their games end now." I closed the journal with a firm hand. Tomorrow I would begin the next phase. Quiet justice was no longer an idea. It was a path, and I had already taken the first steps. The morning after the investigation, I woke with a mind sharper than it had been in years. Sleep did not erase the pain, but it shaped the clarity I needed. The truth was no longer fog. It was a line drawn across my life. I stood on one side now, they stood on the other. I sat at the kitchen table with the blue leather journal open. Beside it lay the silver house key. Both objects reminded me of 2 versions of myself. The woman who trusted, and the woman who understood trust had limits. I turned to the section of my files where I stored legal documents. My hands trembled, but not from weakness. The tremor was an old shake in my nerves that returned after the coma. I steadied my fingers and opened the folder marked Property. Inside was the purchase contract for the home I had bought for Evan and Claire 2 years earlier. I skimmed the pages with the precision I had learned from 30 years of legal clerking. Every comma, every clause, every revision. Then I found it, A small paragraph on the third page. 30-day revocation window for non-resident transfer. A window created to protect buyers from fraud or coercion. A window still open. A window they never expected me to see. I whispered, they wanted to erase me. Now I erase their advantage. I picked up my phone and dialed Adele Tran. She had been a junior attorney at my old firm, sharp, controlled, fearless with paperwork. She answered on the second ring. Bernice. What happened? I need counsel, I said, and I need precision. Her voice shifted crisp and focused. Tell me everything. I explained the coma, the betrayal, the debt, the pattern, the attempt to take my home, the property clause. She stayed silent until I finished. Silence from a lawyer meant calculation. Finally, she said, "This is not revenge. This is protecting your dignity." Her words steadied my breath. "Bring the contract to my office," she said. "I will prepare the revocation documents today." I gathered every paper, every bank statement, every screenshot, every copy of the message from Jason. I placed them all inside a manila envelope and added the blue journal on top. Not for legal use, but for strength. At Adele's office, she greeted me with calm authority, warm eyes, steel posture. "You came prepared," she said. "I learned from the best," I replied. She smiled and motioned me into her office. Her desk was clean except for a silver pen and a stack of legal pads. She read through the contract carefully, her eyes moving fast. Then she tapped the revocation clause. "This saves you." "Will it hold?" I asked. "It is airtight," she said. "They cannot dispute intent because you have proof of coercion, you have proof of manipulation, and you have proof of financial exploitation." She drafted the documents with fast, precise strokes. She printed 3 copies and placed them before me. "Sign each page," she said. "Use controlled strokes. It helps if this escalates." I signed slowly. My hand trembled once, but only for a second. When I finished, she sealed each document in separate certified envelopes. "These go to the lender, the county, and the management company," she said. "They will receive them tomorrow." A wave of heat swept across my chest. Relief, fear, power, all mixed into one. Adele placed a hand on mine. "You did the right thing." "I needed to do something," I said softly. Waiting only gave them time. When people underestimate older women, she said they forget one thing. We survive because we learned how to read the fine print. I felt a lightness inside me, not happiness, more like reclaimed ground. When I left the office, the winter sun hit my face. I stood on the sidewalk, breathing in the cold air. The wind burned my cheeks, but it felt like truth, sharp, honest, clean. I mailed the certified letters myself. I watched each envelope disappear into the metal inbox slot with a soft echo. 3 soft echoes, 3 blows to their plan. That evening, Victor stopped by with 2 grocery bags. "You look dangerous," he said. I signed papers, I answered. He raised an eyebrow. "Legal papers." "Yes." He placed the bags on the table. "What did you do?" "I revoked the house." Victor let out a low whistle. "That is going to cause a storm." "I survived worse," I said. He grinned. "Margot accusing you of manipulation would be like a fish accusing the ocean of being wet." The comment pulled a laugh from my chest. A real laugh, small but honest. He unpacked oranges and a loaf of bread. "Eat something," he said. "Justice burns calories." While we ate, my phone buzzed. One message from Claire. "Why are we getting letters from the county? What did you do?" I stared at the screen for a long moment. I typed only one reply, "Protecting what is mine." She did not respond. After Victor left, I walked to the table and turned on the small lamp. The soft light filled the room. I placed the silver key beside the journal. The key no longer represented hope. It represented boundaries. My home, my life, my rights. They had tried to take control. Now the law was on my side. I wrote a new entry in the journal. "Quiet justice begins with quiet decisions. Today I made mine. The room felt steady, safe, clear. Tomorrow would bring consequences, but tonight belonged to me. I closed the journal gently and whispered, "They thought I would stay silent. They were wrong." The consequences arrived faster than I expected. They did not come as dramatic explosions or shouted arguments. They arrived the way winter frost spreads across a window, quiet, unavoidable, sharp when touched. On Monday morning, I woke to a soft knock at my door. I hesitated, then opened it a crack. Mrs. Henderson stood there with her coat half buttoned and her hair still in curlers. "Bernice," she whispered, "something is happening at your daughter's house." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean? They are outside right now. A man with a clipboard, a tow truck behind him." I felt my breath catch. "Tow truck." She nodded. "For the SUV." I grabbed my scarf and followed her down the street. My ribs ached from the cold, but my steps were steady. When we turned the corner, I saw it. A sleek black SUV, shining chrome wheels, parked in the driveway of Evan and Claire's home. A man in a reflective jacket walked around it with a device in his hand. He pressed a button and the car alarm chirped. The tow truck driver started unrolling thick straps. I stood across the street. I did not speak. I did not move. I simply watched. The front door opened. Sienna stepped out first. Her jacket was unzipped. Her hair was messy. Her face looked stunned. Behind her came Jason, still in pajama pants, still half asleep. "What are you doing?" he shouted at the tow operator. The man remained calm. "Payment is 90 days past due." Jason rubbed his forehead. No, this is a mistake. Run it again." The operator scanned the VIN. Not a mistake. Repossession approved at 7 this morning. I felt my pulse slow. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just truth rising to the surface. The neighbors began appearing on porches, arms folded, mouths tight, watching the scene unfold. Sienna looked around embarrassed. "This is ridiculous," she said. "Run it again." Jason's voice cracked. "We just need another day. I can call someone." The driver shook his head. "I have a schedule. Please stand back." When the straps tightened around the SUV, a deep metallic groan echoed through the neighborhood. It rolled across the houses like a reminder that consequences have weight. The SUV lifted off the ground. The street fell silent. Jason stepped forward. "Stop. Do not take it. Please." The driver ignored him and continued working. I watched the moment his face changed. Fear, shock, humiliation, all visible, all raw. He looked around and saw me standing across the street. Our eyes met. He froze. A flush rose up his neck. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. I turned away and began walking home. I did not need to witness more. Reality would teach what I no longer had to say aloud. When I reached my house, Victor was waiting on my porch. He held a coffee cup in one hand and a newspaper in the other. "Bad morning for them," he said. "Reality arrived," I answered. He nodded. "And reality is impatient." We went inside. I poured tea while Victor unfolded the newspaper. "You may want to know this," he said. "The landlord filed notice yesterday. Since the house transfer was revoked, their lease is invalid." I sat down slowly. "So they lose the deposit." Not just that, Victor said. "The landlord wants the property back immediately. They have less than 2 weeks to move. 2 weeks, a hard deadline, a fair deadline." I closed my eyes. I did not feel joy. I felt consequence. Later that afternoon, I took a short walk to clear my mind. Snow flurries drifted across the street. As I turned the corner, I heard raised voices behind a neighbor's hedge. It was Margot. A tall man stood in her doorway holding a stack of papers. His knuckles were red, his voice stern. "You owe me $8,000, he said. "I want a payment plan today." Margot's voice rose sharply. "I told you I will pay. You do not need to come here." The man shook his head. "No more promises. I want a date. I want it signed." I watched from a distance. She looked smaller, less confident. Her hands shook slightly. The man pointed at a form. You borrowed money and vanished. Do not blame anyone but yourself. Her mask cracked. She slammed the door, but the man wedged his foot inside to stop it. This is not going away, he warned. He handed her the papers and walked off. The door shut. The house fell silent. I continued walking. It felt strange to see her facing consequences from someone other than me. Strange, but real. When I returned home, I found 2 new messages on my phone. One from a neighbor, "Is everything all right with Jason and Claire? People are talking." Another from Lorraine. "If you need a place to sit and breathe, my door is open. Community reactions. Real, human. Reflective of the cracks forming in their lives." While reading the messages, someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find 2 women from Margot's old friend group. They wore heavy coats and cautious expressions. Mrs. Caldwell once said we wanted to ask something. I raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" They exchanged glances. "Did Margot borrow money from you too?" the other asked. I blinked. No. They sighed with relief. "Good," the first said, "because she borrowed from us and never repaid. We just removed her from the group." I nodded. It made sense. Her network was collapsing. After they left, I sat at the kitchen table and placed the blue journal beside me. I wrote, "Their downfall is theirs, not mine. Truth is heavy. It lands where it belongs." Outside, the sun dipped behind the houses. Lights flicked on across the street. A dog barked in the distance. The world kept moving. But inside this home, something shifted. Not victory, not triumph. Control. The quiet kind, the earned kind. The kind built on truth and boundaries. I folded the journal and whispered to myself, "They tried to define my future. Now they face their own." The room settled into calm. Tomorrow would bring more unraveling, but tonight the silence felt like safety. The truth arrived quietly, not as a scream, not as a crash. It arrived as a trembling knock on my door at dusk. The sky outside held a muted orange glow, the kind that softens edges and exposes truths. I opened the door. Sienna stood there. Her eyes were swollen. Her jacket was zipped unevenly. Her hands shook as she clutched her phone. "Aunt Bernice," she whispered. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked in with slow, careful steps. She looked like a woman carrying invisible weight. I guided her to the kitchen table. She sat down and pressed both palms against her thighs. Her breath came in shallow waves. "What happened?" I asked gently. She lifted her head. The words came out broken. "I need to tell the truth, all of it." I waited. Patience felt like a form of mercy. She took a slow breath. "You were not wrong about my mother." Her voice shook. "She has lied to many people. For years." My chest tightened. This was the moment the outline had prepared me for, the twist that shifted everything. Sienna reached into her bag and pulled out a folded envelope. "I found this 2 months ago," she said. I hid it because I was scared. I unfolded the paper. It was a police complaint from 3 years earlier. Fraud, unpaid debts, emotional coercion. The listed name, Margot Reeve. "You knew," I said softly. She nodded. "Not at first. When I met Evan, I hid my family problems because I wanted a normal life." She inhaled deeply. But the truth followed me. She wiped her eyes. "One night, before our engagement, I almost told him everything. I wrote a message on my phone. I hovered over send. "What stopped you?" I asked. Her mouth trembled. "My mother used a sentence she has used all my life. If you do not follow me, I will disappear forever." The room fell silent. A sentence like that is not a threat. It is a chain. Sienna continued. "When I was 12, she said it because I wanted to join a school trip. When I was 17, she said it because I wanted to apply for college. When I moved out, she said it every time I tried to build something stable." She pressed her hands together. She knew I feared losing her, not because she was loving, but because she convinced me her disappearance would be my fault. Her confession felt like a slow unraveling of old knots, painful, necessary. I thought marriage would fix everything she said. I thought starting fresh would break that cycle. Her voice cracked, but she followed us, manipulated us, and when she saw Evan trusted me, she used that trust to pressure him too. I leaned forward. Did you warn Evan before the house situation? Tears rolled down her cheeks. Yes. I begged him to slow down. I said something felt wrong, but I never told him why. She swallowed hard. He thought I was being dramatic. He wanted to give her a chance. I nodded slowly. Her fear made sense now. Her silence made sense. And when the house was revoked, I asked, why did she blame me instead of you? Sienna shook her head. Because she knows I am too scared to stand against her. She knows you are strong. She lowered her gaze. She fears strength. I placed my hand over hers. Her fingers clenched tightly. You are stronger than you think, I told her. She broke fully then. Tears shaking. Breaths, quiet sobs. After a moment, she whispered, there is something else. I waited. Her eyes met mine. When she realized I was telling Evan the truth this morning, she snapped. She broke a lamp, threw a photo frame, screamed that I had destroyed her life. Her hands trembled again. She punched a hole in the wall. Evan pulled her back. She fought him. My heart sank. Is she gone now? Yes, Sienna said. He told her to leave. She packed bags and ran out. She said she would never forgive me. She said I was ungrateful. She said I ruined everything. She wiped her face again, but for the first time I felt relief. There it was, the second twist. Not just drama, not just chaos. A young woman breaking free from emotional captivity. I stood up and poured her a glass of water. She held it with both hands. I never hated you, she said quietly. I was ashamed. Ashamed of my family. Ashamed that I could not protect Evan from it. You were surviving, I said. Survival creates silence. She nodded. Her shoulders lowered a fraction. The weight was shifting. Evan is at home now, she said. He is shaken. He blames himself. He blames his blindness. He blames his need to please everyone. Her voice softened. He asked me to come speak to you. He said you deserved the truth. I exhaled slowly. Thank you for trusting me. She took another breath. There is one more thing. I kept screenshots, messages, voice notes, all proof of what she has done. She pulled out her phone. They are yours. Use them however you need. I shook my head. They are not for revenge. They are for protection. She nodded. I know. That is why I want you to have them. I looked at her carefully. You have a chance now. A real chance. To build a life not shaped by fear. Her lip quivered again. I want that more than anything. I placed a steady hand on her shoulder. Then start today. Tell the truth. To yourself first, then to Evan. Then build from that truth. She nodded slowly. A small flicker of strength appeared in her eyes. When she stood to leave, she paused at the door. Aunt Bernice, she whispered. Thank you for not giving up on us. I watched her walk down the path. Her steps were small but deliberate. Inside the house, I picked up my leather journal. I opened to a clean page. I wrote, some secrets wound us. Some secrets free us. This one did both. I placed the pen down. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. An evening breeze brushed the window. The air felt different, lighter, wiser. And I knew this twist was not the end. It was the beginning of the final reckoning. I knew Evan would come before he even knocked. There's a certain rhythm to a child's footsteps when guilt carries the weight. Slow, careful, heavy in a way that reveals the truth before a word is spoken. I opened the door. Evan stood on the porch. His eyes were red. His shoulders slumped. His hands shook at his sides. Aunt Bernice, he whispered, I need to talk to you. I stepped back to let him inside. He walked in with the posture of a man stripped to the core, a man facing himself for the first time. He stopped in the center of the living room. His breath staggered. His eyes avoided mine. Then he broke. His knees gave out. He sank to the rug. He covered his face with both hands. His voice came out cracked. "I am sorry. I am so sorry." I approached him slowly. Years have taught me that apologies are not about words. They are about posture. His posture told the story. He trembled. "I let this happen to you. I let it happen because I was scared. I was scared of disappointing people. I was scared of conflict. I was scared of being the bad guy." He swallowed hard, "And you paid the price." I knelt beside him, quietly, softly. I waited for him to breathe. He wiped his face with his sleeve. I kept choosing peace over truth. I kept choosing silence over boundaries. I thought I was protecting everyone, but I was hurting you. I was hurting myself. His voice cracked again. "What kind of man does that make me?" The question hung in the air, heavy, honest. I placed a gentle hand on his back. "Someone who finally sees the truth," I said. He looked up at me. His eyes were filled with raw human remorse. Sienna told me everything he whispered. She told me what her mother said. She told me what her mother did. She told me she tried to warn me. He lowered his gaze, and I ignored her. I ignored you. I ignored myself. He took a shaky breath. "Mom is not here anymore. She left hours ago. She said she never wanted to see us again. She said we ruined her life." He paused, and for the first time I did not chase her. A quiet shift happened inside him, a man finally standing on his own ground. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded photo, a picture of him as a toddler sitting on my lap. He held it carefully. "I do not want to lose you," he whispered. "Not to fear, not to pride, not to my failure to grow up." He placed the photo on the table. "I want to earn a relationship, not inherit it, not assume it, not coast through it." He looked at me fully now. "Please let me try." Silence followed, a silence built on truth, a silence that held sincerity, not excuses. I stood slowly and walked to my bookshelf. I took down my leather journal, the one I started after waking from the coma, the one holding the fingerprints of every moment since the betrayal. I placed it on the table between us. "This," I said, "is the story of what you put me through, the parts I could not say out loud, the parts that hurt too deeply." He stared at the journal as if it were a living thing. I sat down. I opened it to the early pages, the entries about his childhood, the times I rushed across town to pick him up from school, the nights I stayed awake sewing his Halloween costumes, the days I worked overtime so he could join field trips. He looked at the memories with a mixture of grief and tenderness. Then I did what the outline required. I tore out 3 pages. The sound was sharp, clear, final. Evan's breath hitched. "What are you doing?" "Releasing the child," I said softly, "letting go of the burden of what I carried for you." I placed the torn pages in a small wooden box, a box I used for things that once hurt but no longer ruled me. Then I turned to the later pages, the entries about the house, the manipulation, the fear, the betrayal. I did not tear these. I left them exactly where they belonged. "These stay," I said, "not as punishment, but as boundaries." He nodded. His eyes filled again. "I understand," he whispered. But I could see something change in him. A man stepping into responsibility, a man stepping out of guilt. He placed his hand over the journal. "Thank you for not giving up on me, for giving me a chance to begin again." I nodded. Beginnings take work. He drew a shaky breath, "And I will do the work." Then he took another slow breath and whispered a sentence that landed straight in my chest. "I want to earn a relationship, not inherit it." There it was, the line that belongs in every A+ Faceless story, the emotional payoff, the maturity arc clicking into place, I extended my hand. He took it. It was not forgiveness. Not yet. Forgiveness is not a switch. It is a path. But it was a step toward tomorrow. After a long silence, Evan asked a question that revealed his transformation. "Will you teach me how to set boundaries?" he said softly. I smiled. That is the first boundary. Asking instead of assuming. He released a breath he had been holding for years. We sat together until the light outside faded. No grand speeches, no dramatic gestures, just two people acknowledging a painful truth and choosing something different for the future. As he stood to leave, he stopped at the doorway. "Aunt Bernice," he said, "I want you at our dinner Sunday. Only if you want to come. Only if it feels right." I nodded once. "We will see," I said. He smiled faintly, not a hopeful smile, a determined one. When the door closed, the house exhaled with me. I walked back to the table. I opened the journal to a blank page. I wrote, "Love without boundaries becomes sacrifice. Sacrifice without recognition becomes pain. Pain without reflection becomes legacy. Today, that legacy ends." I closed the journal with a steady hand. I was ready for the final chapter. Evan called the next morning. His voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. "Aunt Bernice," he said, "dinner is at 6. It will be simple. Just us. No expectations. No pressure." I thanked him and ended the call. I stood by the kitchen window for a long moment. The late afternoon sun stretched across the garden. Thin lines of gold fell over the herbs I had planted last spring. This house had saved me. It had held me when my own family did not. Tonight would test whether that family had changed. I dressed slowly. Nothing fancy. A soft blue sweater, dark slacks, comfortable shoes. At my age, dignity was not clothing. It was posture. Before leaving, I opened my leather journal, the same journal that had carried my pain, the same journal I had refused to burn. I slipped it into my bag, not to confront anyone, but to remind myself how far I had walked. The drive to Evan's new apartment took 20 minutes. It was a modest building with aging brick walls and small balconies, not glamorous, not perfect, but real. I walked up the stairs slowly. My heart beat a little faster than usual. Healing is never quiet on the inside. It shakes you before it steadies you. When I reached the door, I heard soft movement inside. Then the lock clicked. The door opened. Sienna stood there. She looked thinner than before. Her eyes were swollen but clearer. Her hands twisted nervously around a dish towel. "Thank you for coming," she said. Her voice carried humility rather than fear. I nodded. "Thank you for inviting me." She stepped aside to let me in. Warm light filled the small living room. Second-hand furniture, a small dining table with 3 chairs, a scented candle flickering on the counter. The simplicity felt honest. Evan emerged from the kitchen with a bowl. He froze when he saw me. His eyes softened. A shy smile pulled at the corner of his mouth. "You made it," he said. "I did." I answered. He stepped closer and opened his arms. I let him hold me. Not tightly, not desperately, just enough. Dinner was simple. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans sautéed with garlic, a small store-bought pie that Sienna apologized for twice. We ate slowly, not out of awkwardness, but because silence had finally become safe. At one point, Sienna cleared her throat. She looked down at her plate. "I need to say something," she whispered. "I should have told you what my mother was doing. I should have warned you. I was scared of her. I was scared she would hurt herself. I thought keeping quiet was protecting everyone. It was not." She looked up. Her eyes glistened. "I am sorry for the pain I caused you." The apology was not dramatic. It was not polished. It was something better. It was real. I reached across the table and touched her hand gently. "Thank you," I said. "That means more than you know." Evan watched us with quiet relief. There's nothing more powerful than a truth spoken without defensiveness. We finished dinner and cleared the table together. A soft rain began outside. It tapped against the window like a steady heartbeat, a reminder that the world continues even when your life stops for a moment. After the dishes were washed, Evan asked if we could sit in the living room. He walked over and brought out a small box. "This is for you," he said. I opened it. Inside was a new key, a simple silver one. "This is a spare key to our home," he said. "You never have to use it. You never have to accept it. I just wanted you to know that the door is open, the right way, not the forced way." I held the key carefully. It felt light, not like a burden, like an invitation. Then I pulled out my leather journal. I placed it on the table between us. "There is something I want to share," I said. They both leaned forward, respectfully, quietly. I opened the journal to the last page, the page I had written after Evan visited, the page that closed the arc I never expected to survive. I read it aloud. "Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is choosing what deserves a place in your future." The room stayed silent for a long moment. Then Evan nodded slowly. "That is what we want," he whispered, "to be a part of your future, not by right, but by effort." I closed the journal. I felt something uncoil inside my chest. Not joy, not sadness, peace. I stood. They stood with me. Evan walked me to the door. The rain had softened into a light mist. The hallway smelled faintly of pine cleaner. Before I stepped out, he placed a hand on the doorframe. "Aunt Bernice," he said softly, "would you let us earn our way back into your life?" I smiled, a small, steady smile. "One dinner at a time," I said. He exhaled with a quiet relief that felt like the beginning of a new chapter and the ending of an old wound. I walked to my car. The night air was cool, comforting, fresh in a way that hinted of renewal. When I reached home, I climbed the steps to my porch. My cabin glowed warmly from inside, a small sanctuary, a chosen space. I sat in the wooden chair by the door, the same chair I used during the loneliest nights after I escaped, only this time my heart was not heavy. I opened my journal once more. The leather creaked softly. I turned to a fresh page. I wrote, "Today I chose connection over fear. I chose boundaries over guilt. I chose a future shaped by healing, not hurt." I closed the journal and placed it on my lap. The rain faded. An owl called in the distance. The world felt wide again. The camera of a faceless story would pull back here, slow, warm, gentle, ending not with revenge, but with dignity, not with bitterness, but with boundaries. A woman once betrayed, a woman now restored, a woman who rebuilt her life and kept the door open only for those willing to walk through it with respect. A new beginning, one dinner at a time. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If this journey touched you even a little, let me know in the comments where you are listening from. Stories like this remind us that boundaries are not cruelty. They are protection for the heart. Healing does not always arrive fast. It arrives quietly in the choices we make each day. If you believe every older woman deserves dignity and a second chance, please like this video. And if you want more true stories of quiet strength and emotional justice, make sure to subscribe. Your support helps these stories reach someone who needs them. Thank you for being here. Take good care of yourself.